Starting over from scratch. What would Rakuyo look like starting over from scratch?
Right now, it looks like gravel and
this the
empty benches.
doomsday episode.
Yes.
But I get to let's lay out some context. I get to know everything that I know now.
Oh, you are you. This is like just
wait. His house didn't disappear. This wasn't like a bomb went off.
No, all the buildings are there, but all the plants within this like 6 square mile area
like
died.
An EMP
so there's no
for
trees.
Plants.
Yeah, there's no trees in the neighborhood, no shrubs, no grasses. It can all go, but like the situation had to kind of work itself out.
And did all the ceramics just explode and disappear?
Everyone you know is all, no, the ceramics are all still there.
Okay.
Everyone's healthy and happy. They just they're eating produce grown elsewhere.
Okay, so day one of the Rakuyo reset. Post the day after tomorrow.
Yeah, existing budget levels, just everything normal.
I actually think about this a lot. I could go in a number of ways.
Like in a prepper sense, or
not in a prepper sense, but in a what would I if I knew everything that I knew now, but I was rebuilding a whole new collection. I do think about this, like what are other versions of my collection look like, or garden look like. If I had to answer right now today, I would do probably exclusively collected vine maples. Trees that I'm collecting from the lava flows of the Pacific Northwest. I'd focus on that one species. I'd probably do alternative containers, and the bulk of my collection would be these wild old trees that I'm collecting.
Why don't you do that now?
I am doing that a little bit. I'm selling a lot of traditional tree. I'm still keeping, my best maple, my best, beech, my best, pick a traditional bonsai species. But with natives, I'm kind of getting rid of all my natives except for the vine maples, and I'm really focusing all my new acquisition. I'm in a big sales stage of my collection and downsizing the garden, but all of the new stuff that I'm looking to acquire are collected vine maples.
So knowing how frequently you have a different focus for the garden every year or two, the focus might veer a little bit, still in the same channel, but it's gone and it's evolved, as have you throughout bonsai. How long do you think you'll be exclusively down with the vine maples? And would you have said this before you spoke with Suzuki?
I did recently have Shinji Suzuki in the garden, and it was interesting. I think his biggest takeaway, the best thing that he thought I was doing, was collecting these trees. Obviously, that's from a Japanese perspective, where he's coming from the mecca of bonsai in Japan, where he sees nice Japanese maples every day. He sees nice beeches every day. He sees all these high-level traditional deciduous species, and he's coming to America and seeing maybe not as exciting examples of those. But the thing that really stopped him in his tracks was seeing some of the collected, 150-year-old, 200, 300-year-old vine maples that I had taken off the lava flow. And I think I love playing with my Japanese maples and beeches and hornbeams and whatnot, and showing people who don't have the access that he has in Japan to nice examples of those trees. I love sharing that with people. But I think the vine maples are the one unique thing that I may be doing in my career. It's a species not a lot of people are collecting. I have access to this incredible material. It's the one thing that I think I'm adding to the overall bonsai scene.
Wait, why vine maple? Okay, so you just made an argument for vine maple, but
I did.
What about red alder?
So I've collected a bunch of red alders. I've collected a bunch of Sitka alders. Collected a bunch of balsam poplars, cottonwoods. The thing that I love about vine maple is it doesn't fight me. The leaf stays nice all summer long. All the red alders, all the...
They look horrible.
They look horrible.
They look
Native
awful.
deciduous trees are so bad. I mean, everyone who collects beech on the East Coast and is getting like beech leaf disease on collected American beech, you're doing a lot of spraying. Collected vine maples, the leaves look good all summer long. It's as good as the nicest Japanese maple cultivar leaf that you buy from a garden center.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. So size alone seems like that would make that not true.
What do you mean by size?
The size of the leaf.
Yeah, so vine maple is probably more closely related to a full moon maple than it is a Japanese maple. So it is a coarser plant. Although I've collected some that have incredible ramification from the flows. But I don't know. I just think it's a tree that it's not fighting me. It's working with me in a way that I always say Korean hornbeam works with you, not against you. It's a tree that seems like it wants to be a bonsai. It's not getting a fungus every 2 months. It's not,
Why such a narrow focus though? If you're doing a reset, why are you doing such a
if I'm doing a reset, I like personally having that narrow focus. I wanna zero in on something and express it to the 10th degree.
Well, you say that, but you haven't lived on that up until now in terms of a narrow focus. You've had I am the garden demonstrating all deciduous trees. And now you're thinking, I'm going to be the garden demonstrating all the different vine maples.
Yeah. And I think Rakuyo 1.0 needed to be, set the stage for deciduous. But I think Rakuyo 2.0, now that the deciduous love has been spread around the country, I think we could narrow the focus a little bit. And that's just maybe me personally. I've played with all these different species. I mean, there's things that I love. I've also envisioned a future where they're like, what if it was all just ginkgo? Like, can you imagine walking into someone's garden and like it was just like 100 examples of different ginkgo trees?
It'd be awesome.
It would be like the coolest garden experience if they were good, or like just wisteria, just
and
like
all
the
different
weirdest
styles,
all different styles,
yeah.
all like. So I don't know, something about a focus to me. If I'm totally rebuilding the collection after horticultural doomsday. Having a focus, I think, it gets me excited.
It's interesting. I noticed a long time ago, I couldn't think of any examples of professionals who've reached great fame or great renown, especially in Japan, without being closely associated with a source of material.
I think you're right.
It's really interesting. Like the more access you have to something, the more likely you're going to be well known for that thing.
You brought the business into it. Would the name Rakuyo, which I have to admit I have forgotten the meaning of.
Yeah, Rakuyo is the normal Japanese word for deciduous. It means falling leaves. In bonsai, they say zoki. Zoki just means miscellaneous. It's not a pine or a juniper. It's one of those other miscellaneous plants.
Right.
But Rakuyo is deciduous trees in the greater outside of bonsai.
So maybe the name.
I'd probably change the name. I don't know what it would be, but
okay.
But my business would stay the same. Like I love deciduous trees. If I'm restarting the garden from scratch, it's going to be deciduous focus. That wouldn't change. I wouldn't all of a sudden just have 500
ficus.
redwoods or ficus.
But hold on, why would you have a Japanese name for a garden that's focused on an American species?
I probably would change the name. I think
because Japanese is a cultural practice, and the leaves fall from these vine maples each year.
fall.
I'm just playing the devil's advocate here.
Oh, as you should.
Yeah. I'd probably have to change the logo from a trident maple leaf to a to a vine maple leaf. But
I'm thinking of it from your students' perspective. When people come and visit the garden, it'll be more of the vine maple shrine.
It would be a vine maple shrine, and I think that would actually give them a very unique experience than just seeing another collection of kind of one of every greatest hits for deciduous.
We talked about this when you were still doing your apprenticeship, that positioning idea where it's more important to be different than to be good.
Yes,
and
that's a good marketing strategy.
There's a lot to that.
Yeah, I like to be, and I think with my reset, I would want to be both. I would want to be both different and good. I would want to be as good as I can with this different kind of subset of wild collected vine maples.
All right, but hold on. Now, from a business perspective, there's no proven market for vine maples out there, I don't think.
I have a lot of emails in my inbox of people wanting to buy these collected.
This whole
vine
episode
maples.
is just a ruse to stimulate the.
We are going to get to Eric and Jonas's doomsday scenarios once we pick apart mine.
Well, I mean, if we're going down the business route and you're going to continue this as a business, don't you think that specializing that distinctly would cause some problems?
But point of clarification, number one, how many people pay you to work on your personal collection trees?
Where are you going with this?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So my personal collection, I do use a handful of trees for teaching. So I would probably need to have a handful of...
Yeah, the intensives would just change radically.
Yeah, unless it was all bring your own tree stuff. I need to have, a couple maples, a couple beeches, a couple elms, a couple things for
Noah's
classes.
Ark of deciduous, you just totally undid the whole point of the... if you're only having 20 trees in the garden...
Yeah, but I think
The intensive model would have to change dramatically.
the intensive model maybe changes a little bit,
Yeah.
but I still know everything that I know now. So it's
You
not
could
like
help people with their
I could
trees.
help people with their beeches and their hornbeams, but with the trees that they visit, that they experience when they come to my garden, would be my portfolio would be more focused.
Monochromatic.
Yeah.
Jeanne said it so well. What she found so helpful was that a lot of things she had known but not really learned, you were able to get across immediately, not because of anything you did or said, other than she could see it at this stage and that stage and that stage, and seeing those different stages of development, things clicked that she'd been wondering about for a long time. And so she found it really valuable to learn based on seeing those good examples in the garden.
I think it's why it's so important. Teachers need examples to back things up. I think you should find a teacher who you like their work and like their trees, and that's always a good guidepost. And I think having a good portfolio at home is kind of, I think, while nobody pays me for it other than maybe some students working on my trees, it's I think it's incredibly important for being a bonsai professional.
I'm really just caught up in the marketing. I'm just imagining all these vine maples on T-shirts, vine maples on your Instagram wall.
We need a whole new marketing spin for it, but that's where, like, if I had to just rebuild a collection from zero, I think that's the type of collection I would build. I really do.
So there's not a whole lot, like, there's not many examples of mature vine maples out there, but there are some.
Are there any
from your?
Well, we haven't had one in the Pacific Bonsai Expo yet. We did have 2 in the Artisans Cup. I take that back. We had one in the Pacific Bonsai Expo, the very first one, a tree that Daisaku, our friend Daisaku from Japan, liked a lot. It was an accent tree to a big Western hemlock by Scott Elser. And it was a vine maple that was not collected, but was grown over a piece of lava rock for, I think, about 30 years.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah, super cool plant. So it's a tree that can be cultivated from scratch. I have a great access to some very old ones. But I don't know. I think for me, just personally, having that narrow focus, that was what would excite me about rebuilding a collection, not having, okay, I got to go find a nice Japanese maple. You know, I know how hard that was the first time. Okay, now I got to go find a nice beech. I know how hard that was the first time.
Do you think
that's what would get me excited to rebuild a collection after horticultural doomsday?
You'd mentioned the possible Noah's Ark of things for teaching purposes.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason you couldn't have a focus and have some of these other things off to the side. Like that'd be and you could arrange your garden in a way that highlighted that or downplayed it, I think.
Yeah.
But would you be open to doing that, you think?
I've actually toyed with that. I mean, Jonas, you and I have talked a lot about, we're constantly just running through our heads of different scenarios of what the garden could look like. If I had to sell everything but 10 trees, what 10 trees would it be? If I had to sell everything but 20 trees, these are great games for everybody to think about. So I sometimes I think, what if I only did Shohin? Like I always kind of go through these kind of mental exercises of how does the collection look if I start to change things drastically. But I keep going back to it. The thing that would make me excited to rebuild a collection and spend 20, 30 years is the vine maple kind of thing. And I don't know if I would have...
If you'd be strict with yourself about that.
Yeah. Part of me doesn't want to be, actually. Part of me wants to be very strict. And maybe 10 years later that ends up being boring, but that's where I would start.
Do you think your garden design would change if you had
think so.
a monoculture? What comes to mind for how you might arrange?
I'd probably get rid of every bench. I'd have a lot fewer trees, so I'm maybe keep the best 20 or 30 that I could collect and assemble, and I'd probably have them all on pedestals and probably create a native type garden. I mean, I even thought about bringing in like lava boulders and from where I'm collecting these. And
I was going to say, you might want to create a landscape.
I think that could be really interesting.
Kind of like our friend in Michigan that does such a beautiful job with his landscape and all the collected material out there.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine there'd almost be no reason to have benches or even poles. You could do more alternative, because you mentioned alternative containers. Mm-hmm. You could do really fun garden display kind of approach things.
I think you could, yeah.
But I like the idea of leaning into the native environment, and then it could be kind of a garden space. It
depends. Nice expression of the place in which I live and plan on staying for the rest of my life.
It's a very budget friendly approach.
That also does not
Well, I
that
never-
is
that's
not
not
lost
lost
on
on
me.
you. Yeah.
That is not lost on me.
I never got to the end of my question actually, which was
Why vine maple?
would you go out searching for historic, quote unquote, vine maples that were already bonsai?
You know, there's very few of them. I would love to one day inherit that one on the rock from Scott Elser.
It's a favorite of mine, boy.
Michael Hagedorn has collected some amazing ones. I would love to one day inherit his vine maple tower, and a couple of the other beautiful examples he has. But I'm really excited about the ones that I collected this last year. Next month in September, that's my scouting month where I start to go out and plan this year's collection. And I don't know, I love this plant. It's the only palmatum family maple that grows outside of Asia, back when the Alaska and North America was connected via Russia over to Asia. That's when they came over 20 million years ago, when the Pacific Northwest was a deciduous broadleaf forest. This is the last remnants of that. And so it's a really interesting plant.
Palmatum. Is that a subfamily of acers?
Yeah. And so like full moon maples, vine maples, Japanese maples, the few others are in this subset.
Okay.
I think there is opportunity too to still figure this plant out. I think it's foreign enough that I'm still relatively, it took me 7 years of collecting to find this one collection spot that I'm in now. And I don't know how much deeper the honey hole is, but I'm going to keep going until I find that.
Well, you can find garden trees. You can find nursery stock trees. Who knows?
Exactly. Seeing a beautiful example like Scott's has me, I don't know. There's just, and doing different creative plantings. I have several of these that are almost Kusamono-esque. It's a very interesting plant for deciduous because it's, the Japanese call it oshare. It's like a very evocative, elegant plant. And so it's thin trunk forms that are more wispy in their nature. And it's a different vibe than your typical just sumo trunk trident maple.
Your current garden. Yeah.
My current garden. Yeah.
Yeah.
So paint a picture for us of like the scope of what they look like in the wild, because obviously you're collecting from a very unusual environment, but that wouldn't necessarily be the norm.
It's a very weird plant from the wild because it's both a pioneer species and a climax species. So it's a pioneer species. It will grow in a bed of fresh lava rock. It will grow, a little tiny seed captures itself. It creates a few leaves. Over the course of time, those leaves break down and make soil. So when I'm digging these out of the lava rock, I'm digging 4 feet down into the rock. I'm seeing where you're not anywhere near the tree, there's huge gaps in between the rocks, just like bare space and air in between all the rocks. But you see this layer of duff that's the size of like a garbage bag or something right underneath the tree from broken down leaf compost that has made its own little soil mass over time. So they're really kind of the first thing that comes in, colonizes these lava fields and creates soil for then a Doug fir seedling that they maybe reach itself into that environment and grow. So it's pioneering this environment, and when they do that, they have these very fantastical forms. In the forest, they're kind of octopus-like trees. They grow very horizontal and vine-like. And the interesting thing is a lot of our foresters predict that vine maples, because they grow so horizontally and they root very easily, a plant might travel across the forest over many hundreds or thousands of years. As a branch lays down roots into the soil, another one grows over the course of 50 or 100 years, lays down roots into the soil, that the natives call these octopus trees. And they really have this really interesting growth habit that's very foreign to how a big leaf maple grows, which is our other native maple in the Northwest.
Well, on that note, what's your vision for the forms that training might take? It sounds like you're not looking to reproduce a common Japanese form with these
I think
things.
that's the exciting thing.
This
The
is
aesthetic
like
playground is much more wild and free and expressive. It's almost more like calligraphy.
It's starting to
in a
sound like
way.
American bonsai at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a different vibe than it's a new aesthetic playground that I could spend my next 20 years exploring.
Well, so then I can ask, as we broaden our artistic perspective on what bonsai can look like, when we veer away from what we've seen traditionally in Japan, are we expanding the horizon of what bonsai can be, or are we simply lowering our standards?
I think we're expanding in this case. I think
That means there's cases where it might be the other.
it might be, and that's I think part of the fun and journey is exploring where that boundary is. But I think the thing that really impressed Suzuki when he saw these, the thing that just amazes me is just how old these plants are and the age for these forms. It is totally, it does not look like anything like a Japanese maple while still being that same kind of DNA. It's a very different, and it's because these trees are 500 years old. It's like imagining, these crazy twisted junipers that you see in the Sierras or ponderosa pines, just the deciduous kind of form of that. And that's not often expressed in deciduous bonsai art. So that's very different than a broom style Zelkova, which is your common street tree. Having these trees growing in extreme environments and extreme conditions in the deciduous side of things, I think is not necessarily explored yet.
I've got to say, hearing that sounds incredibly freeing to not have to worry about the same old diseases, the same old conventions, the same old containers, the same old everything. It's like, oh, I can just kind of do whatever style I want. I can just kind of go with the flow. I don't have to pay anything for these. Like,
I don't know if it's that
Well,
that loose, but because at the end of the day, I would still want it to feel like it came from this environment. I do think, you can simply wire a branch, and most branches that people wire just have repetitive S curves over and over again.
well, I'm
And
talking
vine
about these
maples
things
have-
as benefits. Like these,
Yeah.
to me, like are sounding freeing, because when there is such a rigid interpretation of what to do, that can get old. That can lead people to grow lots of young trees. It can lead in lots of different directions.
the breed hasn't been defined yet, right? It's still
And
it's an individual looking at it rather than a community of people who have worked with this over time. And you're kind of in a pioneering kind of mindset, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's a great way to. No one can tell you what to do. When you're the pioneer, if you're in front of the line, no one can tell you what to do.
Yeah.
It kind of doesn't matter because there's no experience, there's no precedent. It is truly freeing in numbers of dimensions.
And I think if I had to rebuild my collection after a doomsday scenario, freeing is a good mindset for me to be in after a tragic loss of losing every tree in the garden.
Yeah.
So we picked apart my doomsday plan. I'm curious. I'm looking at Eric now. Eric, if the bonsai apocalypse made its way towards your place.
Well, what apocalypse is going to strike Eric?
I don't know. Just the drones from AI come over and evaporate every.
Well, have you seen the dirigible AI blimps that are flying all over SF these days? That's actually happening.
Okay, so those AI blimps come, they wipe out every living plant on your.
The DoorDash blimp takes out your collection.
What does your collection look like if you have a complete rebuild?
All right, I'm going to skip over the fact that I have an insurance policy in the sense that I don't keep all my trees in the same place. So even if one location were completely destroyed, I would actually still have trees in another location.
Well, because Jonas is next, let's just say all of the Bay Area goes down.
All right, fair enough.
Big catastrophe. Every plant in the Bay Area.
The tide just keeps rising.
There's been a journey that I've gone through in terms of when I started doing bonsai, starting with more native material, like what you've been talking about, not vine maples, more interest in oaks, deciduous oaks, and broadleaf evergreen oaks, and moving through a lot of other things that were just not very feasible. People try manzanita, drones have very uncooperative characteristics and all of these sorts of things. But you learn something from all of them. And later in getting into bonsai and understanding the relationship of bonsai to Japanese culture and how many of us are learning based on teachings that are coming mostly from Japan, and now being tens of thousands of trees deep into basically Japanese tradition and having that all wiped out. The thing that I've been doing sort of on the side that I find very interesting is to make trees that might be evocative of Japanese forms, but are on the somewhat cartoonish side. So if you think about bonsai as a cartoon of a tree, I tend to be making a cartoon of a cartoon or a caricature of a caricature. And there are a number of different iterations of this in my personal work and because bonsai takes, 20 years to do anything. There's like, I could be working on this for 15 more years before I could even show it to anybody to have them understand what I've been trying to do, because it's just something that's been an idea in my head. And so I think that there are many different ways that you could branch out from traditional bonsai forms. And I think one of the more well-known ones at this point is Laurent Dureau's interpretations of, well, what if the laws of physics were different? Or what if you had bonsai growing on a different planet? What would this look like? And so you start to think, well, what are the assumptions that I am using in order to create these bonsai forms? One of them is your own human mental programming, right? Like, so we have these magical numbers that mean a lot to us without us even realizing it. And we have triangular forms that somehow the tree just resolves once you get it into an asymmetrical triangle or something like that. And I think if you follow the kind of the history, like art history essentially, and you apply the layers of abstraction that art history went through to bonsai as an art form, you can get to some really interesting places. So I think that is sort of the broader avenue that I would head down. That's not a very specific answer.
Yeah, I'm going to press you on this now, because I got dug in deep for my concept. So what does that mean? Are you growing all of your trees? Are you buying trunks? Are you, what species are we talking about? What do these caricatures look like? What does this collection actually look like 5 years from today? So that you rebuild?
Yeah, I will give you some concrete examples. And I think Jonas has had a glimpse of a couple of these. I decided that because iron comes from rocks, that basically any tree growing over a piece of iron is a root over rock, or a tree on a rock, right? So I started having a friend of mine weld roughly abstractions of trunk shapes, and then growing exposed root pines over those abstract trunk shapes. So
almost like Nick Lenz-ish? Like
more
instead
like
of a trumpet or a skull, it's abstract steel?
More like a little bit post-apocalyptic, where you would have like a tree growing on the top of a power pylon or something like that.
Okay.
I have there's something in my brain aesthetically that is attracted to sort of industrial landscapes, and that kind of decaying urbanism sort of vibe that you see in certain spheres. And I think applying that aesthetic to bonsai is really interesting. So that's one of the things that I've been doing. And so if you think about it like that, it's going to be hard for me to describe it completely, but imagine a power pylon with like some exposed root pines growing on it. That's one thing that I have in the works.
Yeah. And I want to ask you more about material selection too. So I'm going to go collect a bunch of old vine maples for my material selection. You are a very famous grower in the United States. Are you mostly growing your collection back from young plants?
I think for a long time I've had an interest in forms that are not in things that are you can't collect, right? So, and I don't know why that is really. I think that it's always been toward the end I'm talking about, which is basically if you get so many steps down the abstraction route, that doesn't exist in nature. So you're going to have to create it from scratch, which is very limiting in a way. And I would say that a different answer to this scenario might be that I might start growing just collected limber pines. I think that they're fantastic. They grow really well in my environment. And they're one of the more beautiful pines that I think we have available in the United States. And I think they're well adopted in terms of, but the level of material that's out there is amazing. So if I wasn't going to go for the growing route, that would probably be something I would consider.
Something that struck me when I was touring some pine nurseries with Jonas in Japan was that a lot of the young pine growers would actually not grow their plants from seed, but they would go collect old seedlings from the mountains and bring them back. And they would still have what looks like young juvenile starting points, but it might be a 10 or 15-year-old plant. And I thought, I have a student or helper, Maciek, who goes and collects those same little limber pines or lodgepole pines and brings those back. I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, that's a really common practice. That's funny is the first thing I thought of about you losing the farm stock is when I think of how painful the lessons have been about how to learn to do it right and knowing how fast the turnaround is from seed to finished product, at least for the business products, how wonderful. Oh, let's just start everything in light of all of that I have learned. Because when you have 5 years into something, if you aren't happy with something that happened 2, 3, 4 years ago, you got to wait for the next batch anyway. So it's not necessarily just awful to have to start over. It's like, oh, well, what if a batch started out on the right foot? And then I took the right step again and again from there. Like that could be really satisfying.
Well, more practically, and I'm sorry not to get into the the doomsday scenario. I mean, there's just things that go wrong when you're running a nursery, right? And I have had at least a few of those on a major scale, because anytime you're growing 1,000 of something and something goes wrong with it, you're going to have 1,000 times more work to get it corrected. So avoiding those kinds of pitfalls, I think with my current level of knowledge, which I would not be losing in the doomsday scenario, I would definitely be able to avoid some of those pitfalls. But I don't know. It rebuilding the nursery, it's almost like, I hope my wife doesn't listen to this because basically
Now it's about to get good.
The most interesting things in the nursery are the side projects that I'm working on. So there's the viable product, and what makes it a viable product is, both, is it relevant to what the general public is looking for as a bonsai starter or as a young bonsai or small bonsai plant? Because that's what I could create on a commercial scale. And, those, the commercial product, that's what keeps the whole thing afloat. But that's obviously not going to be the most interesting thing to someone that's been doing bonsai for 25 years. But the things that are stuck over in the corners tend to be those longer term projects where you might walk by it and see, like, what in the world is that? And, that's more interesting to somebody. Whether or not you lose it, you're just going to start over with all of those things in your brain and be like, well, which ones are the most interesting? And then I would keep going down those kinds of routes.
That sounds really positive. Now, one thing you didn't say as much about is having any older material. What would it be like waking up to just the young trees and not as many older trees? Or if you did grab some older trees, to have them being nowhere near. What's neat about the vine maples is they're honestly pretty satisfying kind of out of the ground. They leaf out in spring and they naturally have these soft droopy branches. I can't say that about the limber pines I've seen right out of the ground. Like, do you think it would feel different not having these artistic things around you that represent the age? Or do you think you would take some steps to try to recreate that?
No, I mean, I think I would do the same thing that I asked whether Andrew was going to do or not. And that is, I would probably go out and source some more mature trees relatively quickly.
What do those mature trees look like? Are you just getting some older versions of black pines that Jonas has grown? Are you getting, some collected trees? What?
Yeah, I think it would be like, I have a oddly eclectic mix maybe of my own personal trees, but some of that's climate driven. Some of that is just historic sort of opportunity to buy things. I don't go shopping or hunting for trees that often, in the sense that I'm not like knocking down people's doors and saying, hey, what have you got for sale? If I usually am a little just more opportunistic about buying things. But I think if I had to replace my collection, there's a certain satisfaction that comes from working on more mature trees that I would need to get back relatively quickly. And that would come in the form of, purchasing material that's older, that had survived the apocalypse by being, in Oregon or something like that.
With those trees, do you make them look how they traditionally look, or are those abstractions of abstractions? Do you do something new with those older trunks?
I think it would be pretty traditional, to be honest with you. I don't think that not every tree lends itself well to the next level of abstraction. And so I will say that there are things one of my favorite bonsai growers, Jim Gremmel, most of his material was sold off recently. And I actually 4 or 5 years ago, before he was getting sick, we actually went up there and I bought this ground grown piece of material from him, which he had a lot of. And it looks much like many of the things that he grew, but I sort of like, instead of turning it into a bonsai, decided to go sideways with it. So there are those opportunities still within material, depending on the stage I think it's at. But if I'm going to buy a mature black pine, I'm going to lean into the weird if possible, but I'm not going to do a tree justice by, hacking and slashing just to change the style.
I'm so sad that neither of you will be submitting to an expo anytime soon.
Oh, I'll be submitting to an expo. I want to see if my goal for my collected vine maples is an expo maybe 5 to 10 years out.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're not going to be submitting to the next expo.
Not the next one.
Well, I mean, overcoming
it's kind of hard to like. Yeah. Okay, Jonas. So your doomsday, the cloud comes over to you.
What I was going to say is,
can you get within 1
Eric,
year?
You got twice the time Eric had. There's all kinds in here, because that's one of the things that starts coming up is these aren't exhibit ready anytime soon, and especially in the case of the collected trees, it starts getting back to that question of how do we balance time in training versus the value of the trunk on its own merit. And you find you lean a little more one way when your trees are pretty fresh out of the ground, and you might lean another way when your trees have been bonsai a really long time.
Well, I'm not going to lie. There are, for better or worse, legally or illegally, there are good Japanese trees available in Northern California right now. I don't know anything about the operation. I do know where to buy them, and I probably would. I mean, I don't know why I wouldn't. Like if you, maybe his collection get wiped out at the same time. I don't know.
Oh yeah, there's that.
But I mean, if there's a source of material out there, I mean, we've long said that we don't care where the tree comes from for the expo. It's really about the tree, not the person. Mm-hmm. I think many people have a hard time setting that aside, and I am definitely among those people, because my sense of craftsmanship from creating a tree is an important aspect of how I relate to the tree. Not necessarily, I mean, that's the distinction, is it's my relation to the tree, but that doesn't show up to everybody else that looks at the tree. They just see the tree. So in the end, if I'm exhibiting a tree that I made from a seed or a tree that I bought last week, it's the same to the other people. The only difference is to me.
Right.
It's not about you when you put something on a stand. It's about the plant that's sitting on it.
So I think I would have to give that up for a little while.
Well, and it's two different things, whether you have a certain standard for what trees you allow in your garden based on where they're sourced or what their story is, versus taking that same thing and putting it in a show. There's like two different sets of criteria. It might be fine. Maybe it'll feel good to buy a tree but not show it, or show it but not buy it. I don't know how that would work, but in other words, there's different criteria. And I can imagine people falling into any one of those different camps.
Yeah.
So what emotional damage am I dealing with when I wake up and there's no trees? Was this a slow process? Did it happen overnight?
I don't know. I'm imagining that you're just going on vacation. Forget the trees.
As tragic as it would be, it's kind of exciting to imagine the opportunity of building from scratch. I don't know. I find that kind of thrilling.
Yeah, where's the negative in this? Yeah.
There's a big
all
negative
three
one.
of us agreeing here then that building trees is more interesting than owning mature ones? Is that what we're saying?
Well, I'm kind of cheating because I'm collecting mature ones. I'm just using old stock.
Well, I take exception with that. I don't think you're collecting mature ones. I think you're collecting old ones.
To later
yeah,
mature.
they're baby bonsai.
Yeah. But Yamadori is a fast track. We all know that. But I don't know, Jonas. What do you think?
I definitely don't know what it would feel like to not be with trees that have either been in my possession or in the family for decades.
I mean, all three of us have trees that we've had for 20 years.
Yeah. And so things I've started from seed 32 years ago, I don't know what it would be like to not have all that stuff overnight. A big chunk of my garden is stuff that I started from scratch, or if not start from scratch, put a lot of energy into. And a lot of the trees represent people in my life, friends who have passed on their collections or have just plain passed. And so it's funny, I've found that the more I've been in bonsai, the more trees represent the people that have worked on them. And so I refer to the trees in the garden as those people. And so it's not the object that's gone as much as the representations of these people or their stories or their approaches or whatever it happens to be. Now, of course, the poetic answer is I will just start one seed and that's all I need. And I can go from there. But that would be completely asinine, and I couldn't say that with a straight face if I tried. I don't know what... I think that by far the overriding feeling beyond grief is relief. Did either of you talk to Bjorn about what it felt like to not have bonsai at home for a while? You ever seen a bigger smile cross his face?
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah. Amazing. And so there would be enormous relief. And one funny thing about bonsai is, while incredibly rewarding, it's brutally stressful and brutally taxing. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting what happens when you let go of aspects to that. I think one thing, and Eric and I found it from different directions, working with young trees feels like play. And it doesn't necessarily feel like play when you are the next custodian in a line, whether it's with a recently collected tree or an old established bonsai. It's a very different feeling. It's wonderful. I love it. But there's an intensity that is just not there when you've got, oh, I did that one to the left. Let's do this one to the right. Oh, let's do that one upside down. Oh, I forgot that one. Oh, look, it's kind of cool. It just does so much for your creativity when you grow stuff from scratch because you're not worried about it. You're not messing it up. You're way more experimental in your approach to all these things. And old trees, it's like you were just saying, some trees might be a really good start for a traditional design. Some might be a really good start for something totally novel or outside of the canon. None of that puts a single tree in my backyard yet, but
yeah. So what's that look like? Trees rebuilding in your collection in your backyard.
Yeah.
Are you going big? Are you going small? Are you going
No, let's get more
species?
specific. Let's get more specific.
Fully specific.
Give us 2 examples of trees that you know are available right now that you could buy.
Ooh, I like
and
this
it does not need to be an old tree. It could be anything you want.
I don't know of any available trees at a price that I would pay for them.
None.
Oh, zero. I would have bought it otherwise. I mean, that's easy.
Even with no
in fact,
trees on
and
your
I'm
property?
in the middle of reducing my collection right now as well. I want to reduce about a quarter of the trees in the garden, 20-25%, something like that. And I have no interest in replacing giant trees, for instance.
So you're going a little smaller.
Or if not going smaller, at least capping the big ones. Whether or not I change anything else, definitely a cap on the giants.
So the 3 of us were walking around your garden for over an hour today, and one of the things that we noticed is that you have more redwoods than ever.
You have a lot of
The redwoods are proliferating. I don't know how that's happening. Yeah.
I mean, they grow well in your zip code.
That has been the biggest and one of saddest. So that's been a big loss for me, is I have lost the ability to grow trees that don't like Alameda now that our weather's been weird. That's been a huge loss to not be able to grow maples, for instance.
It's kind of like
species that I love, species that I know a lot about, species I have a lot of familiarity with, as well as specific trees I've worked on for a long time. And so I've been for several years now in the process. How many azaleas did you see in the garden today?
Not many. You dodged the
Maples.
question.
Well, and
I didn't get to the question
It's
yet.
interesting too because like I'm very lucky in my zip code. I can grow almost any species that I want, and I want to like narrow to like one. And you're in a very limiting zip code where you can't grow a lot, and you would love to grow all these different ones. And it's kind of funny to see that.
And I have a lot of experience with a narrow number of species, and so I know what that experience has been like, and it feels great to have familiarity with the species and facility with working on them. But specifically to the redwoods, that as I've lost deciduous species that don't do as well without winter or summer, I find Redwoods don't complain as much. Some seem born to suffer disease, but the rest just kind of keep trucking along. And I've found them very, very satisfying, with the single giant caveat that I'm still not totally sure if they're going to prove being worth it for a couple of reasons.
Well, talk about no, don't go back to the original question, and then we'll come back to the maintenance.
Which original one? The redwood one?
No, which true trees would you get?
Oh, I literally, I don't shop for trees. I literally have no idea what's for sale, and if I knew it, I'd buy it. I don't. Where are these trees that I would want to buy?
All right, just imagine it up.
Okay. So a tree that
Insurance hands you $10,000 and you got to go buy something.
Well, so I've been wanting to buy trees for years, and I've actually spent an extraordinary amount of energy looking for ways to grow the collection, and I've found it painful. When Andrew and I started looking for, and that it's a different question than what fantasy tree that doesn't exist would I buy, but knowing how many hundreds of hours of my life have gone into failing to acquire the material that I've been looking for, that seems way more germane. We've been consciously trying to build shohin collections for years now, and I find that in general, you kind of have to make shohin from scratch, and in many ways, they feel slower than bigger trees because no one accidentally grew good starts to shohin. It's harder to collect them, and no one accidentally grew them. Young, small trees are easy to find, but decent starting points for decent shohin, which the goal is, I've found that brutally hard. There's a small number of imported trees and a small number of old bonsai that come and go, and I've talked to Shannon about it as well, but it really is a shocking number of trees. The trees that I would most want to buy aren't currently for sale. It's like trees in private collections that I like, and I would consider buying those, but it's so emotionally heavy to think about getting into that stressful relationship. I really don't know what I would do if pushed to it. If I had the money in my pocket and a hole on the bench, would I take on another stressful project? Good question.
So, looking at your grow benches versus your old tree benches, what batches of trees are you going to start when Doomsday comes around?
So, knowing that you were coming to the garden, that you hadn't been here in a while, it'd been quite a while since you've been here.
Yeah, it's been about 6 months.
You know what one phrase popped into my head? Oh, it's too bad I have nothing for him to see. I have done so little bonsai work in the last 6-7 years. And I actually just told everyone in this room that just 2 days ago, it only finally occurred to me that until I start budgeting time to work on my trees, nothing's going to change in the garden. That it made me a tiny bit sad just to think, oh, it would have been nice if I had any single thing to show you that would feel good to say, oh, check this out, or oh, you haven't seen this yet. But I literally didn't have a single surprise, a single point of interest, a single spark. I'm glad we're ending on the down note. We're supposed to start with tragedy.
I don't know. You had a few new trees in the garden. You had there's a few more redwoods out there than I remember last time. There's an oak and a trident that showed up.
So the reason I'm mentioning this is, why would I buy another tree that's not going to get worked on unless I change some behavior to the point where I have the time to start doing these kinds of work? And so I would think really seriously before acquiring more material.
You said you're doing about a 20% downsizing now. Is your
that's an optimistic, but yes.
2.0 collection? Are you have a much smaller collection than just getting rid of 20%? Are you gonna only have 20 trees, for example? You can have any young trees.
So dealing back in current real life, non-zombie apocalypse, the goal would be to have it be less. So I want to be in a position simply where I have time to work on my best trees. And I haven't been able to say that in 6, 7, 8 years, if ever. And that's my sole measure. I've probably told other people to do this scores of times, if not hundreds of times. And this whole time, oh, but I want to make this show, or I want to write this book, or I want to travel to this place. And I've made those decisions instead of just spending 5 minutes actually wiring a tree in the backyard. And it's been enough years of that now that it just seems silly to not be spending more time doing that. It's taken 1.5 years and the help of a huge group of volunteers to get the trees caught up in terms of basic deferred maintenance. So I think they're healthy. They're ready to be worked on now. And I feel fantastic about that. But I still need to drop some pretty significant obligations before I can start wiring and designing trees again. And that's going to take reducing a lot of trees. I'm saying that with a huge smile on my face because I get excited whenever I think about having fewer trees in the backyard.
Modcheck and I just did a podcast on this a few episodes ago. It's something that I've noticed a lot of people are doing. Like it was like COVID, everyone's collecting as many trees as they possibly can. Now, so many of my professional colleagues that I have and just random hobbyists are at that point in their collections where they're like, I want fewer, better trees. And
that was the founding principle of BIB. When we started BIB, our slogan was quality, not quantity. And we just kind of teased people who had more than 15 trees and thought they wanted all their trees to be good.
I think we're in a second wave of that right now.
Well, we'll see if we get there because we were all living it. Like we literally had most of the club members were at the one in, one out kind of perspective.
So I think we're gonna have to do a reset here, and your zombie apocalypse has to include you having as much free time to work on trees as possible, so that we can get through this.
Oh, someone just offered to take over the expo for me. That's the best news I've heard in a long time.
We do need volunteers for
this
the expo.
This is only as
Shameless
part
plug.
of the.
So yeah,
all nonprofits got evaporated in the.
So other than just less trees that you can stay on top of more, what does your collection rebuild look like? If you have to
try to get to that, but I'll say the question I would want it to answer is, I hear a lot of people really focused on what does my style look like, or whose trees do you like, or what do you think of that style, or that looks like a so-and-so tree or such and such tree. And I always think whenever I hear references to this, which is often, I think, oh, I wonder what my trees look like. Or would look like, because I haven't been working on them. I don't know. I would love to be able to answer the question, what does a Jonas tree look like? I know what a tree that hasn't been wired in 7 years looks like, but I don't know what a tree would look like if it actually looked the way I wanted it to look. I would love to be able to answer that question.
So I think to get over this hump, you're going to actually have to just pick one or two and do that.
And to do that, like, that would be kind of catastrophic for a lot of other stuff on the property. And that's why I haven't done that yet. Where I live in this, Tanaka said it actually when we were in Japan. Peter said, why don't you just get rid of 2/3 of the trees and just make these trees good? You've got tons of great bones in the garden. And he's like, no, I just love having a lot of trees. I know they're all moving along slowly, but at least they're moving along, and I love having that. I actually don't feel that because I don't have apprentices who can water for me. But yeah, I literally don't even have the teas to do that. I only just a couple of weeks ago noticed how many black pines I have that need work. Because when you grow trees from scratch, after a while, if you don't sell them all, that ends up being a lot of work. And as of now, if I actually made a list of how many trees need a full wiring and added up how many hours that's going to take, I can tell you now I'm not going to get 10% of it done this year. And I'm not totally sure how I'm going to manage that.
Well, you don't have to worry about that because they're all gone.
They're all gone. Doomsday has struck. Yeah. And what would make
And I've been trying to buy better black pines for 10 years and haven't found any. I know. Yeah.
Do you think you would focus more on old trunks or young growing batches of young trees? Or would it be kind of 50-50-ish as it is now? I
don't think I would want to grow large batches of young trees because I have so many friends who are doing that right now. And it has felt great to know that, oh, thank you, Ed. Thank you, John. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Eric, for growing all these trees. But I do like growing small numbers of trees because I can still learn, I can practice, I can test out different treatments for bugs or test out different soils. Or there's still great ways to learn. And so small batches of trees would probably be pretty fun to do.
And what 3 species would you be growing?
Well, right now I'm growing pine and juniper, and I've yet to figure out what the good small deciduous would be, but I would love a nice deciduous in there.
Yeah, what happened to the Pacific Northwest deciduous huckleberry?
Blueberry's finicky in a pot. Number one, it's tough to collect.
No, not blueberry. The
vaccinium.
Yeah, vaccinium.
Yeah, just vaccinium in general. Just tough to collect. They're not. I mean, they're just finicky in a pot. They just don't behave as well as the vine maples do.
Kind of like a manzanita. You just like have endless trouble with them.
Yeah, they're known for getting a lot of dieback. I think some of it can be prevented with better care, but they are known for dieback.
So as a bonsai species, it's not an easy one.
Yeah, I mean, if I ever come across a field of dozens of great ones, I'm sure I'll be collecting them and using them. But it's not, I don't know where that exists yet. And I think the leaf is just not as durable and pretty as the vine maple leaf is.
I struggle to think of any small leaf deciduous that are native to California.
I struggle to think of many small leaf deciduous trees that grow really well right here.
Eric grew a batch of great cork bark Chinese elms for Shohin School.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, if we give up the native thing.
Yeah. If you give up the
but
native.
even giving that up, it's still a pretty small list. Hornbeam has done really well here. The ilex are off to a good start. We'll see how that goes. Styrax have been really quick.
I mean, something that Eric and I both mentioned were native plants. Do you have more of a desire to do native plants if you hit the collection reset button?
Well, so the way I've always thought of natives are they native to where you live or to that?
Native to the
Right,
Central
and
California.
so the only thing native to right here is pretty much oak trees and grass. Otherwise, it's a little bit of a drive.
Well, originally there were redwoods in,
Not in Alameda, though. Yeah.
not in Alameda, but
if we expand the circle,
within a little
5
bit of a
miles.
drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, within a
5
few
miles
miles
up
away.
on the hill.
Yeah. The redwoods are... redwoods are an open question. I don't know if they'll totally be worth it. And so the two reasons I'm not totally sure redwoods are going to be worth it are that, although they're super fun to work with and crazy fast to develop, I don't know if they're always going to be so much maintenance or if they're going to chill out a little bit. Because if it's always an absurd amount of maintenance, I don't know how good that's going to feel.
that doesn't
over
answer your
time
time question either.
Well, and the other thing is the deadwood rots crazy fast. And so if you like having the ones with deadwood, and so I genuinely don't know that I'd want to double down on redwoods if they're all going to take up all my time. I'm not going to be able to make them look the way I want. I've proven I can put branches on them the way I like. That's very satisfying. But if you have to pinch every 10 minutes and there's no one day on which they look good and the deadwood's all rotting, then I'm probably not going to double down on redwoods.
They can be challenging, that's for sure.
Now, I'm also in the middle of, I think I'm planning like 9 videos on redwoods, and I've been taking tons of pictures into them. There's a small number of things that I think are really important to know about working on redwoods, and then you can do whatever you want with them. And so I just don't know, like over longer periods of time, like I won't know for another 5 or 10 years.
I just want to clarify that we're talking about coast redwood, Sequoia sempervirens. And if anybody asks me about Dawn Redwood, I'm going to smack them.
So Andrew and I are confused why so few people do dawn redwoods, because they seem to be one of the easier species. And
if you're just growing trunks, like nothing, I've never seen many people take the branching to the finish line, but if you're growing bones, they grow fast.
super fast, and at least the basic bones of the primary branches are incredibly fast.
So what you're saying is this is a good tree that you can't grow branches on?
That we've yet, I mean,
no one's demonstrated it. No one has
I've yet
these,
to see one that could get into the expo.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of good examples of twiggy dawn redwoods.
So how would that make this a good tree?
Well, that's what we're saying is it's open question.
Yeah.
And so I've been playing with them the last few years, and they're developing crazy fast.
What would be different? Like you talked about things that might be similar, like maybe what would be different? How would your approach change other than just less trees in general? What's different in Bonsai Tonight 2.0?
Well, what's funny is when I think of most of the best trees in the garden, they're trees I got from other people, and they're often rescues of trees that got sick and someone sold them, and then I've been trying to repair them forever and ever and ever.
That's a secret recipe for professionals to get trees is we get them when they're sick and in disrepair, and we fix them.
And it might be the single dumbest thing I've ever done. And so it's incredibly tempting to try to keep the trees with the most history in the Bay Area or Northern California going, because I have all these shared memories of these people, and these are the trees I grew up going to bonsai shows, seeing these trees. I like some of these species because of these exact specimens I now have in the garden. But after buying a dozen trees, they're probably the most expensive trees I've ever purchased, and they're still sick and not healthy, and or the flaws are getting worse. I'm just realizing, pick your battles really carefully. And so, I mean, this is a big part of why I'm looking to sell so many trees.
So you'd focus in on species that grow better here in the Bay Area.
It's that whole push the boulder downhill thing. I want to, like you said, not fight trees that don't do well here.
Yeah.
And just be open to lucky finds. I think the number one reason I want fewer trees in the backyard is so if something interesting does come along, that I won't hesitate to, because I'll have an empty bench space for it. Not a very specific answer at all, but that's the way I've looked at collection building for years now, is what's a good find. Now, the mistake that I make, and that so many might make, is when I look at the bench a year after I bought a tree and I'm looking to sell it, and I'm like, well, why did I bother buying it in the first place?
Yeah.
And so that's why it feels good to invest in projects that'll sustain a longer term relationship with them. But I don't know, things might be very different.
I'm guilty of that. Oh, that's a good tree. I need to rescue it.
Yeah, we're both in that boat, and we've both worked on a lot of prominent Northern California trees over the years to mixed results.
It can be, it can be frustrating, because if somebody else is giving up on it for, whatever reason, and then
Right.
you're like, oh, I can fix that. And then you're just like, wait, maybe there was a reason.
Yeah. I'm also finding the standards change over time when you have trees that aren't doing as well because of weather, or if animals in the backyard are causing havoc, or fresh diseases are popping up that you never really had to think about before. It really changes the perspective on where to go from here. When I think of what's satisfying in the garden, that little redwood's one of the first trees I pick up and show people. It's like, oh, look, you can do this little thing right here.
It's a redwood.
Yeah, and it's funny. I don't love the tree per se, but I want to now see the same kind of work on bigger trees. I think that'll be more interesting.
Aesthetically, would you be mostly in the same realm of where you are now, or do you feel the need to do something like I am and be more free and
So that gets back to material sources, and I just don't know of obvious material sources. I would have to invent a source. Like, you spent 7 years looking and you found
7
something
years.
that was not on anybody's radar on day one.
Yeah.
And so, having spent 0 days looking for that, I mean, we've spent countless hours up in the Sierra Nevada. We kind of know what's up there. And yeah, I don't think I would spend all my time collecting the species we've mostly been collecting so far. I know I wouldn't pretend that Rockies do well in Alameda.
Maybe once grafted.
Have you had grafted Rockies at your place yet? I haven't.
Yes, but not long term.
And grafted Shimpaku on California. I actually think the Californias grow better here. Like, California junipers do oddly well here, believe it or not.
Versus not as
They do better than the ones with Shimpaku grafted on them. The Californias grow more vigorously here. Did you know that?
Is that true for both Itoigawa and Kyushu?
I don't have Itoigawa on California. I don't know that a lot of people have done that. I know it definitely some have been done and they seem to be fine. But I also know that a lot of junipers do well the first 15 or 20 years after they're grafted. And once they've been grafted for a long time, I don't see as many examples of them being really strong after that. And I don't know if that's just coincidence of bad care or if it's something biological going on. But just a lot of the trees that we've seen that Boone's clients worked on, we saw them grafted, we saw them develop really, really quickly, and then we saw them freeze. And I don't know that I know any exceptions to that. Can you think of any Kishu that are just going gangbusters on California's 25 years in?
What about Boone's Dragon?
Is it going gangbusters? That's a Sierra.
Oh, is it a Sierra?
Yeah.
What was a Kishu for?
And Seiji had a big one as well. So it's funny. Like, a lot of the solutions that seem so obvious, I'm not convinced they're all solutions long term. And Boone always used to warn about that, grafts that pop out after a long time or other funny things that happen. I wonder if the grafting craze is going to have the same allure or more allure, when we find out how these things perform over time. Maybe they'll do better than we expect, maybe not. Yeah, so no, I'm going to more cast my fate to the wind, think carefully, probably still make mistakes and try to learn from them.
I think that's 3 different takes on Doomsday. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, so I don't know whose take's going to win. Because either way, you're going to find some vine maples. Either way, you're going to have some fun projects.
The fun thing is we're kind of doing our are we're not committing 100%, but we're kind of doing these things. Like I have my little vine maple garden started off to the side. Eric's got these little iron exposed root things kind of started. Your
Redwoods keep popping up in the garden.
Redwoods keep popping up, and you're downsizing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we're kind of working towards some of these new things, even if it's not a total wipeout that leads us there.
Well, so on that note, assuming no great tragedies, will our gardens is the current trajectory of our gardens going to get us closer to this doomsday vision 5 years out?
I think I'm in a stage for my garden where I am selling a lot of, I'm keeping a hand. I don't need 20 Japanese maples. I'm keeping 5 and maybe even go down to 3. And same for beeches and hornbeams and everything else. And I'm narrowing my focus on those plants. And the only thing that I'm expanding is the vine maples. So I'd say I'm kind of working towards it.
Do you have your sales trees on a sales page somewhere, or are you just inviting people to the garden?
Come to the expo on February 5, 6, and 7,
Yeah,
2027.
there you
I'll have lots of vendor tables.
Do you think your business or personal collections in a trajectory consistent with the post-apocalyptic vision?
Well, I don't think I ever addressed the business aspect in my answer. That was more of like a personal answer that I think I gave.
What?
And I think that I would probably, well, I would maybe reset in a similar way, although I'm currently working towards a much larger nursery facility and would, with the having someone dropped an atomic bomb on my current nursery, probably would just
Speed that process up.
move myself relatively quickly to the new nursery grounds rather than confining myself to a half an acre. So, I think that the rebuild of the business would probably look a little bit different, but I think that I am sort of working in the same direction as what I would be doing if I lost all those trees. God, I had somebody else ask me this question just about a week ago, and I said it would be so devastating because when I think of a decade in from a shimpaku cutting to something that is starting to look like a nice little shimpaku shohin, that's a lot of time and energy and thought, and it's it'd be hard to give that up.
It's funny. Sometimes I think about why don't we see more trees like the trees we've been growing? But I might as well be asking, why don't we see more people that have put this kind of energy into it over the last 20 years? You don't see as many people who have been fighting for decade after decade to build a farm, to grow these things, to solve all these problems.
Well, there's major hurdles that you have to overcome, at least in the Bay Area. Maybe they're harder to overcome than in many other parts of the country, but the space constrictions are real.
That's a big one.
And so when you're talking about growing, if you might only have a balcony or, your fire escape or something like that in many places. And so I think that I have some envy maybe for those guys in the 1960s and 70s that could just leave Berkeley or leave San Francisco, go up to Sonoma County, buy 10 acres of land for almost nothing and set up a nursery.
As so many people did, actually.
Yeah. And a lot of them are not there anymore, but there's that sense of, I'm really at least by being in the Corb area, I'm really fighting the rest of society in a way. Like there are very strict land usage requirements in California and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. It's funny. I find a lot of the goals I would have, I notice them in reflected with others. So like, as I was saying, knowing, Andrew, that you were coming over today, what would I have wanted to show off to you? That's a good way to think about what kind of trees I would or want on the property and what kind of shape, because I know what kind of things you'd find interesting because we've been to a lot of gardens together and we find a lot of the same things interesting. And that's why I'm just like, I would love to have a garden that would feel good and would actually reflect what the successes are right now. And that's just going to be time. And I think it's going to take time to get there.
It's kind of the way bonsai works. It's a time based activity.
Yeah, somehow.
I do think though that all three of us sort of stayed focused on the process rather than the result in a mostly anyway.
Because that's the thing that we'd be doing.
Yeah.
And if we lose everything, that's all we have is process, essentially.
But I mean the enjoyment of the process, not
Yeah.
like, okay, you're not stuck with a bunch of young plants. You get to work on a bunch of young plants.
Yeah. The other
Yeah.
thing is I thought about it a lot from the teaching perspective too, is instead of having people work on your trees, like you'd say they'd be bringing their own trees and you're doing that, but it really frees up your thinking about what kind of trees you want. What skills do you want to share with people? What kinds of interactions do you want to have with people at the garden? And that would radically change when you have a bunch of young material or freshly collected material.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine counting. This is how we do a primary structure setting. Well, why? Because we all just bought our trees in the last couple of years. If we're all working on trees that are 30 years old, like who's counting the 600th time this has been pinched or the 4,000th time a wire's been put on or off? And so I probably would have a completely different perspective on what to write about, what to do a video about, what to talk about. These podcasts would be going really deep into vine maple lore.
My YouTube channel would just be the vine maple channel. It'd have to change.
Yeah.
Could be interesting.
I think so.
I'm having a hard time picturing it. I got to be honest with you.
Well, have either of you seen the trees that I've collected in person yet? I don't think so.
No, all I picture in my mind when you say vine maple is like this weird, like gnarly stump with a bunch of tentacles coming out of it.
Some of them are kind of
That's
like
about
that.
right. Yeah, actually, yeah. I know you got it. You got the picture just fine.
One of the cool things with the vine maples is so many of them are natural cascades that as someone who just loves the cascade form, I mean, half the ones that I collected are going to be cascades. And so it's just something like a thing that I told Jonas last year. I would love to get more cascades in the garden. If I ever do a batch of Japanese maples, they're just going to be cascades because we have plenty of upright ones floating around. But most of these are natural. Not most, but half of the ones that I collect are going to be cascade style.
I feel like I grill you all night on this one because I'm gonna quote Addison here now.
We'll do the part 2 with Addison tomorrow.
Oh, that's a good idea.
One of the things that I find compelling about bonsai is when the thing that you're looking at, it was hard to do.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to give you the Golden Shovel Award. I'm going to give you the.
To be fair, finding these trees was not for lack of effort. I mean, and material selection. I am walking past more trees than I'm collecting. I mean, I am.
It's still golden shovel territory. That's
well,
how walk you.
And to our listeners, what is the golden shovel? What is the golden shovel reference, Jonas?
It's shorthand for the most important tool is the one you use to dig the tree up.
And
that it has no reflection on your skill or talent, but just like what tree you dig.
Well, but so my point is, if you're just is not a good word. If you are digging up these very select trees, and is this a Duchamp process?
No, I don't think so.
Well, and that gets back to my kind of, are we lowering our standards or broadening what we're going to consider as good bonsai?
Well,
I mean, this was the one thing that one of the top bonsai masters in Japan, that was his one impression from my garden, the thing that he looked at for more than 30 seconds. The only plant that he looked at for more than 30 seconds were these, and he spent 5 or 10 minutes looking at these trunks. And
but we're talking about what you're going to do with your.
So, but is doing something to them part of the equation?
Yes, because they're not. The planting of them will be special. These aren't plants that fit in conventional bonsai pots very easily, as we know, Yamadori can be tricky in that regard. But the planting angles, the inclinations that a lot of these cascades might have to be planted at, I think there's a lot of room for creativity, as Michael has kind of shown with some of his avant-garde vine maple plantings. And even with Michael's, you have one of the top traditional bonsai display masters from Japan coming in, and when we do a display program for the Bonsai Society of Portland, one of the trees that he wants to grab first and use is that vine maple tower, something that is very foreign to Japan, but very easy to plug into conventional bonsai display. setting that up with a waterfall scroll and a little kingfisher fishing, a bronze kingfisher off to the side, or a little boat or something. It's even though it was very foreign in its concept, it was very easy to plug into that traditional.
But it's
bonsai.
new.
Right.
New is fun. I mean, all of that's explainable by novelty.
Yeah.
If I travel to some foreign part of the world, I'm not going to light up when I see a mediocre pine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to see something I've never seen before. I want to see something fun, something that's like, oh, what's that? How's that work? Oh, that's so interesting. I think never seen one of that before.
In that way, my vine maple work is probably the most important work I'm doing, because it is that thing that I'm offering that is different than something that you can see when you go to Japan or when you go to Spain or when you go to anywhere else.
So novelty connects to importance. We've got whole new dimensions coming into this now. Well, it's interesting, just different ways of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it is important to, as a professional, to distinguish yourself from the work of other people. But I often criticize myself actually for rabbit holing, essentially, where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do that. Everybody does that, and then I'm going to go do this other iteration of it. And all of a sudden, what I'm doing is so complicated that I'm like, wait a minute, what am I doing? And
no, really?
Yeah, no, it does happen. Yeah. But, I think that you have to ask yourself, like, I mean, I'm not trying to poo-poo your idea, but novelty for novelty's sake is just sort of like, is it still a bonsai? Like,
I think we're taking the things that we value in bonsai, age, forms that exist in other things, and it's just being applied in a medium that's new, with a plant that, hasn't been done before. I mean, half of these, like I said, are cascades that will look fairly similar to many cascade Japanese maples that you'd see in Japan, in their form. Maybe a little bit more wild, but I wonder if they still look wild after they've been in a container for 20 years, getting worked on by a bonsai person. I think being in that captivity in a pot, they kind of get domesticated the longer they are around. We see that with a lot of Yamadori trees, that they lose their wildness the longer they are in a pot. And who knows what these collective vine maples will look like 20 years down the road, but maybe they do start looking more like conventional Japanese maples or something. I don't know.
Do you find much dieback on them? Are there like dead areas on them?
Very little. And the thing is, every single one I probably collected 35 of them last year. Every single one survived.
And so never any big cuts on them?
Some of them are good enough that I can collect it with the ramification that it has, and it looks great. Mm-hmm. Some of them, the ramification is way too far out for the scale that I'm looking for, so I trunk chop them, and they bud back just fine. So sometimes I'm valuing just the raw trunk. Sometimes I'm valuing all the way to the finest twigs.
Do you think you'll have any deadwood features on them, or are you going to try to?
They will have kind of hollows. Yeah, there are several ones that have kind of hollows that probably won't be cemented and healed right away.
If people want to see examples of this either in photo or video, have you shared that anywhere?
We've done a little bit of content on our channel, but this year, as we do our collecting and now that a lot of these trees are healed in for almost a full year, a lot more content to come on the vine maples. And like I said, I would love to do a alternative display in an expo one year where, I bring several of these collected examples and try and recreate this environment in which they're being collected from in a miniature form.
I can imagine a vine maple room.
A vine maple room. You imagine a truckload of lava boulders coming in, being assembled on the floor with
trees
pedestals
suspended on the walls.
Yeah. No, that's something that really excites me. So I feel like if I have a catastrophe where all of my trees die, I need something that's going to be exciting for me to get over that grief that you mentioned, of Bob Law's Shishigashira no longer being in my backyard.
That was the first tree I was going to ask you about when you were selling. I'm like, well, you're hanging on to Bob's.
I'd be devastated. Yeah. That tree's always going to be in my garden as long as it's alive. But maybe I just have one or two of those and 40 vine maples off to the side. Who knows?
Yeah, and that's like a good example of a lot of the trees that I was thinking about losing all the time. It's all these trees I associate with people.
Yeah.
Because when I think of your garden, I think of that tree, and I think of Bob, and I think of Bob's garden, and all those things all go together.
Yeah, they do. The vine maples are it's a fresh start. You don't have that people association, but you have like a connection to a wild place, and I think that's a different kind of spirit than what Bob Shishi kind of gives me. I'm transported to it's a different connection. It feels very different and in a fresh way.
When we're thinking of making trees traditional or not traditional, is the tradition that we're making trees that look like Japanese trees, or is the tradition that we're people taking care of plants in a containerized environment? In other words, there's different ways to interpret what we mean when we talk about the tradition of bonsai, or whether or not it's traditional bonsai. And it just made me think that, because we've talked about it in terms of, are we lowering standards or raising the opportunities for doing things differently? Because at some point it really is two sides of the same coin. But if their tradition is just caring for plants, does it matter what they look like for them to be bonsai?
I mean, I'm not sure that I got an answer to the question of whether or not this is a Duchamp, because
well, that's what made me think of it.
You did answer it, but in a sense, what that question is asking is the work that you put into the plant, or your vision for and molding of the plant the important part, or is a found object just as valuable or more valuable as a bonsai?
I think at least just as valuable, but I think like I was saying, how these get domesticated over time and they how if they do lose their wildness or not. I think that's a really interesting relationship to explore in bonsai is taking that wild, crazy specimen that took me so much time and effort to find and seeing what does it look like in a bonsai container 20 years down the road, getting
what makes
touched
me
on
think,
by a human rather than the elements of the storms and the lava flows and the crushing weather and environment. And
what's interesting about the precedent that Michael gave us is he's gone in that different, more naturalistic thing. He took a novel species, took a novel approach to planting it, and has taken a novel approach to developing it. Like just, he's given us fresh looks at what to do with plants and
I view that not as loosening the standards. I view that as adding to the conversation. And that's kind of where I kind of view it. And there's ways to do it in a way that probably does loosen standards. And that's not where I'm aiming to be.
So the reason I mentioned it is, why doesn't this happen more often? Is it the material? Is it the artist? Or is it because everyone's looking for more of the same?
I honestly believe if you drop the three of us anywhere in the world, maybe not anywhere in the world, but most places in the world, we'll find material to scratch our itch with and create bonsai out of. And, it might not be, if I'm in the middle of Kansas or something, it's probably not going to be vine maples, but I'll find something out there that can scratch that itch and pioneer some new plant that a lot of people are maybe missing. I think it takes someone to have that creativity and insane quality to do what we do with our trees to go make it happen. I don't know.
Now, would you feel any different about that whole scenario if you a year from now found out that there was a vine maple society that regularly collected and displayed them?
No, what do you mean?
If you found out that there were body of conventions around
150 people who regularly met and they were doing exactly what you're talking about doing.
Oh, I would love to meet them. I'd be the first one to go sign up for that convention and see what they collected and what they've done with it. And I want to see how long ago they've had them and talk to them about where they dug them. And no, I'd be the first one to sign up and go jump on that bandwagon.
Well, I mean, the question comes from you arguing that the novelty has value. So right. I'm taking away the novelty. Say this is a thing that has been done, and it's well understood and well known, and you just weren't aware of that fact.
It's a good way of getting to that Duchamp question again.
It's not just the novelty. I like this plant. I think it has a beautiful leaf, a beautiful fall color, a beautiful type of expression that's different. Like I said, it has these long, wispy, elegant branches, evocative forms. I like exploring that over the stout just heavy sumo trunk trident or Chinese quince. And so I think just more, it's almost like Bunjin-esque in a way that a deciduous can be. I like that form. So even if 100 other people were doing it, I think I would still find it fascinating. It's probably more fascinating that 100 people aren't doing it. It's fun to be able to,
I'm just imagining walking out into the garden tomorrow and rolling the dice next to every tree and just having arbitrarily losing 50%, but I don't control which 50% succumb to the malaise.
Yeah, I don't like the apocalypse scenario, especially if you're going to do it in slow motion. I mean, that's just depressing.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, that it has to happen all at once. Slow motion is not the way for it to.
Well, actually, a lot of us know a lot of people that just lost all of their trees, so it's actually not that light a topic.
It's not.
It's been interesting watching people rebuild their collections, and so a lot of these people are volunteering a lot. They're helping out at their local garden, like say down at the Huntington, for example. And so a lot of people have thought really differently about what it is they like about doing bonsai, and it's focused on the practice a lot more. And so they're helping out friends to some degree, but literally being with the community of people working on trees at the garden has been one of the main things that they've been doing. And I totally understand that. And then kind of having fun getting a tree at a time. And then they remember, oh yeah, but now I can't travel because I need someone to water because I have one tree now. And then those other things come into play. But it's been funny watching people have a lot of fun without having the trees on the property.
Yeah.
Are you talking about like wildfires?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wildfires.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I just left Portland, it was the ppm or whatever in the air was 300.
Yeah, it's that time of year.
Yeah. No, I even think about it like, Spokane just happened, a very urban city, not unlike Portland, just had to evacuate. Like,
I was actually just looking at the fire map where the friends I have in Spokane.
Yeah, it's like,
I was curious.
I mean, another variation of this podcast is what 5 trees do you fit in the truck to drive out of town?
I don't remember exactly how long ago it was, but the house that I lived in Thousand Oaks for 2.5 years, at one point there was a fire, and I looked at the fire perimeter map, and the fire, it was in the perimeter. And a couple of days later, called up because we had sold the house, however many years before, and called up the real estate agent, and she was like, no, it didn't burn. I was like, I don't know whether I'd feel reassured by that or not, but I'm glad I don't live there anymore. Wildfires are crazy.
Yeah, now when there's fires, I look at the fire trackers and I'm tracking because I have so many friends growing things all over the place now. I pay a lot more attention to gnarly storms in the Midwest or back east or fires up and down the coast.
I don't think we could prevent your zombie apocalypse, was it? But it sounded like Agent Orange almost. But dioxin's so toxic that we would all be dead too. But like wildfire preparedness, that's a real thing.
That's a real thing.
And grabbing trees in the car, I was just reading about a family that threw everything they owned in a boat and headed towards the middle of a lake.
Wow.
To wait out a fire. And so, yeah, what tree did you bring on the boat? So Andrew and I played many versions of this game a couple of years ago. And what was really interesting, how many trees do you keep if it's 40, if it's 20, if it's 8, if it's 3? And what you really quickly realize playing the game is it's all about determining the criteria for what you keep. Is it good trees? Is it valuable trees? Or is it sentimental trees? Because those might be completely different trees.
Yeah, this is why everybody should have really small trees, I think.
You can just fit them all in your pocket. With your
one of my
Count
left
It'd
pocket.
take a long
Right
time to
pocket.
load them if you have 10 minutes to get out.
Yeah, if you're still waiting, hooking up the trailer or behind the truck. Yeah. You don't need as much water for them. If you take them with you, you still need water for them. Yeah. Well, we'll have to talk about what if we wake up and have twice as many trees as we planned on in the next time.
Like the Sorcerer's Apprentice scenario.
Yes, exactly, where they just keep redoubling.
Every time you trim a tree, it just turns into another one.
Pops up into another. Actually, I think you're living that reality right
Eric,
now.
that's just your life.
Andrew and I are reducing, and you're like leveling the next back 40. Awesome ambition. Well, thank you for the chat.
Yeah, fun to think about.
I'd say it's my pleasure, but I'm a little freaked out.
The music on today's podcast was brought to you by the fine folks at Blue Dot Sessions. Check them out at www.sessions.blue.